This is Asbestos Awareness for North Carolina Baptist Men. This course will provide basic asbestos awareness for those men and women volunteering to provide disaster relief to those in need. North Carolina Baptist Men do not conduct asbestos projects. We are not certified or licensed to conduct asbestos work in North Carolina or any other state. Safely working around asbestos is a big responsibility that takes awareness and care not to disturb this material, which in some cases may be present. Small oversights in this volunteer safety program could result in exposure to volunteers, patrons, and children in need. This class will not certify you to be an asbestos worker. You will not receive a certification or license from any state in the United States of America from taking this class. This class is about awareness of asbestos hazards for volunteer safety. Asbestos is a mineral mined from the ground. Asbestos is not man-made like fiberglass. The white vein in the rock that you see in front of you is actually asbestos fiber embedded in the rock. You can see it kind of peeling away. Asbestos does not make you itch like fiberglass. Asbestos does not have a smell. Asbestos does not have a taste. Asbestos does not make you sneeze. In fact, there are no short-term reactions to asbestos exposure at all. You really don't even know that it's there. Asbestos was used to provide insulation from heat and cold, to add fire resistance to building materials, to strengthen products like floor tiles or ceiling tiles, to keep noise acoustics down, and it was used in over 3,000 commercial products like hair dryers, artificial snow, ovens, refrigerators, and safes. It was even used as a filter in cigarettes. The Kent Micronite filter was a cigarette filtered with asbestos. Asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral. There were many asbestos and are many asbestos deposits right here in North Carolina today. The key awareness with asbestos, there's a number of different types. There's amosite from South Africa, chrysotile from the Americas, and many other varieties. However, what's really key for our purposes is whether the material is friable or non-friable. If the material is friable, it can be crushed to a powder by hand pressure. This type of material can be released into the air and is frankly quite dangerous. If the material is non-friable, I'll give an example of floor tiles in good shape. The material is not generally dangerous. If there's been a flood, there's 9x9 floor tiles in the area, we don't want to break them up into little pieces, but in and of themselves they shouldn't present a danger. Whereas, if there's friable material that's crumbled off of pipes or off of boilers, for instance, that could in fact present a serious hazard. We always need to keep materials wet, whether they're asbestos or not, during demolition activity. Asbestos enters the body through two primary routes: inhalation, or breathing the fibers. Asbestos fibers that get in the air are microscopic. You can lay about 30,000 of them from end to end and it would equal an inch. Okay? So inhalation by breathing the fibers, or by ingestion by eating the fibers. Now, asbestos is kept wet when it's worked on to keep it out of the air. It helps minimize the potential for exposure. In terms of ingestion, even if the asbestos is wet, if people are working around it and then they take a break and eat lunch or have a soda or a glass of ice water or some tea, it's possible if the material's on their hands to be exposed to it through eating or drinking. So it's always best, no matter what kind of project you're working on, to wash your hands before you eat or take a drink. It's for your own protection. The U.S. EPA has established three primary categories of asbestos-containing material, or ACM. Surfacing materials. These are spray or troweled-on materials on surface coatings. Thermal system insulation. This is more your plumbing system materials, like this air cell asbestos insulation in the photograph. And miscellaneous materials, which tend to be mostly your floor tiles, ceiling tiles, fire doors, and other miscellaneous products. If you see something that looks like this and it's damaged, It's best to stay away from it and let professional licensed asbestos workers deal with it. This is, I know from my own testing that this is 30% high-level friable asbestos, and as volunteers we do not want to disturb this type of material. You can tell particularly the ends of these pipes, it looks like cardboard, like a white or a dusty cardboard. This is air cell. It's great insulation, but also very dangerous. Now, in terms of surfacing materials, or it's spray-on or troweled-on material, again, we don't want to disturb this type of material if we come upon it. It was applied for a couple reasons. The slide on the right shows it up blown in on a deck for fireproofing purposes. The slide in the middle essentially shows where it was spray applied inside dorm rooms or barracks to keep noise levels down in sleeping quarters. And it was essentially shot in, you can see, from an air gun. But this material can be high content asbestos and also can be very dangerous. You see the worker on the slide is in a special personal protective equipment, high efficiency particulate air filters, a Tyvek suit. The room has been sealed off with plastic to ensure the fibers don't migrate to other portions of the building, and it's a pretty serious operation to remove asbestos-containing materials. North Carolina Baptist Men does not participate in this type of activity. Thermal system insulation, again, is mostly on heating and cooling or piping systems. It can be on large tanks like you see on the left. This tank, the tank material itself could be asbestos, the patches could be asbestos, the packing, the gaskets, the elbows, any portion of that could be asbestos-containing material. On the right, you can see asbestos-containing material. This was behind a bathtub, and it's basically air cell pipe lagging that's been installed. It's got metal bands holding it on, and it was great insulation, but again, if disturbed, it can be very, very dangerous. On the bottom, you can see a gentleman installing asbestos in a small boiler, probably about 60 years ago. No PPE, no protection whatsoever. At the time, we did not have any awareness to the hazards of asbestos. Miscellaneous materials are generally non-friable, though occasionally can be friable materials. Such things as 9-inch floor tiles may be common in the field. As long as these materials are not broken up or pulverized, they are generally not hazardous. The glue daubs on the left, for instance, upper left, if left alone or if intact, they will not release fiber. However, to hit them with a hammer or a sledgehammer could pulverize them into a powder and release fiber. Gasketing material, if it's ripped, can release fibers, but generally your non-friable materials, your miscellaneous materials, will not present a hazard unless disturbed. The 9-inch floor tile, if it's been flooded, will generally not be a problem unless it's been in a basement for 50 years and it's all pulverized and broken into small pieces, for instance. Asbestos was first used in America in roofing shingles. Henry Ward Johns took asbestos, mixed it with asphalt, and ran it through a washing machine wringer with burlap sacks, creating the first asbestos fireproof roofing shingles. In addition to roofing shingles, cedar shakes or transite asbestos shakes were often common on houses built in the 40s, the post-war era, and lasted very long, very good siding. However, if we're working on a building, we don't want to be breaking up cementitious siding shakes. They can release fibers. Okay, so transite cedar shakes looks like cedar shakes on the side of a house, but in fact it's asbestos material more often than not if it's cementitious. Now here's a situation that would require a 16-hour trained worker at minimum to clean up the condition under an employment condition. 16 hours allows small-scale, short-duration work without a license. That means basically you can clean up not more than can fit in one routine asbestos waste bag. Okay? However, North Carolina Baptist men are not participating in this type of activity. Something like this, damaged asbestos laying on the ground, it's probably best to leave it alone and work on something else. Areas with damaged friable ACM should not be entered. State licensed abatement professionals should abate these areas prior to recovery action. If you're there to assess the conditions, please do so by camera if necessary. You'll see in the slide on the upper left a footprint on a board where someone had entered an area with a significant amount of friable material, asbestos material, that had been flooded out and left their footprint. Well, that footprint ended up taking friable asbestos fibers off somewhere else, maybe to a car, maybe just to the yard. No one will ever know. But we don't want our volunteers being exposed and then carrying those materials into other areas with them. If you see a condition like this, report it to your blue hat or your white hat and be absolutely sure that the area is taken care of before our volunteers enter. The asbestos sign, the OSHA asbestos sign, is posted when abatement contractors are present and have established a containment area. You can see the plastic is there to keep the asbestos inside that work area. North Carolina Baptist men do not cross these areas of demarcation. Please stay out of any area marked with OSHA asbestos signs. Asbestos workers are giving a whole host of personal protective equipment, including HEPA-filtered respirators, full-body suits, eye protection, and more. Paper dust masks are prohibited from asbestos projects, and through this class, you are not being certified to wear any of these types of personal protection equipment. Please do not engage in asbestos abatement work while representing the North Carolina Baptist men. The reason asbestos is of such concern is that there's three major types of disease that results from asbestos exposure. Asbestosis is a scarring of the lungs, which takes between 10 and 40 years. It's called a latency period. It takes between 10 and 40 years from the time somebody's exposed to develop this disease. This disease, shipyard workers, insulators, boilermakers were known to come down with this disease long after they worked in the shipyards or installing insulation. Mesothelioma is a cancer of the lining of the lungs or abdomen. It takes about 30 to 40 years for this to show up if someone gets it. 30 to 40 year latency period. Mesothelioma is said to be one of the most painful cancers on earth. Lung cancer takes about 20 to 30 years for it to develop as well. The more people are exposed to asbestos, the more likely they are to get it. And smoking cigarettes increases the risk of cancer as much as 90 times when mixed with asbestos exposure. Asbestos is regulated. In fact, it's one of the most regulated fibers in the world. Asbestos is regulated by OSHA with the OSHA Asbestos Standard, which establishes worker protection programs. The U.S. EPA through the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, known as AHERA, which focuses on the school asbestos program. U.S. EPA National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, which regulates demolition and renovation standards for abatement. The North Carolina Department of Labor also has the North Carolina Safety Program. The North Carolina Department of the Environment and Natural Resources, North Carolina Department of Health, Health Hazards Control Unit, and a number of counties and cities all regulate asbestos. We want to be sure to respect this highly regulated material and ensure that we do not, through North Carolina Baptist men, disturb this material in any way that could possibly endanger either our volunteers, our patrons, or their children. Thank you for your time and attention in this asbestos awareness for North Carolina Baptist men volunteers. The purpose of this course is to ensure that you have awareness to asbestos-containing materials and the fact that the North Carolina Baptist men does not engage in asbestos abatement work. Please be cautious. If you're concerned about asbestos, report it to your blue hat and or your white hat. Let's not leave any conditions that could result from the work of North Carolina Baptist men that would put our patrons, their families, their children at risk. And in closure, Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Proverbs 3:5 and 6.